Well, we've got a big show ahead, so let's get straight into it with my panel. Joining me is Victorian Liberal leader Michael Kroger and One Nation Chief of Staff James Ashby. Gentlemen, thanks for joining me tonight. Let's start with the federal government's budget update to be officially released on Wednesday. It'll show a massive drop in mining exports, about $100 billion, at the same time as higher government spending, all of which will push Labor's budget further into the red over the next 4 years. Now, here's what Treasurer Jim Chalmers had to say in response to excellent questions from my Sky News colleague, Andrew Clennell.
You had deficits predicted in your budget of $28.3 billion, growing to $42.8 billion in 25-26, which would be about the sixth largest on record, then 26.7, then $24 billion. Is the totality of those deficits that you're going to forecast on Wednesday bigger than the totality of those four forecast in the budget?
Oh, you have to wait and see the numbers on Wednesday, Andrew. We've been upfront and said that because of some of these pressures, well, you have to see on Wednesday. You'll see all the numbers on Wednesday. There hasn't been slippage in every year. We've been able to do a little bit better in the near term, but there's been some slippage for reasons that we've been upfront about. But the overall story since we came to office, two surpluses, a huge turnaround in the budget situation that we inherited, much less debt, much less interest on the debt, will show that we've made really very, very substantial progress since we came to office.
Michael Kroger, substantial progress. I'm not sure many people would agree with that assessment.
Well, it depends how you define substantial progress, James. Look, he's had two surpluses which have nothing to do with him, right? He's not in charge of the budget, right? The budget's in charge of him. He's punch drunk. He's a cork in the ocean, this poor bloke. He's just a commentator, right, telling us, you know, what's happening out there. He's got no control over anything. What we know is this. In the last budget, that he said the next 4 years, the next four budgets will be $121 billion worth of deficits. Deloitte's put out a report the other week saying it won't be 121, it'll be 149 billion. Now, we don't need to wait till Wednesday. I can tell you now, it's more than the 121 that he predicted. This bloke cannot control his spending. He is too weak to be Treasurer of this country. That fellow Pallas, who's doing us all a favour by leaving, he ought to get a third rocking chair.
For Jim Chalmers.
Well, mate, seriously, I mean, Chalmers has completely lost control of the budget. We're going to have deficits over the next 4 years, probably more than $150 billion, right? It's why I don't think Albo can wait for the budget to be brought down before he calls an election. He's got to have an election before he has a budget. The punters out there think that there's something about Chalmers. He's had two surpluses, so that's good. When they say, yeah, but by the way, the next four are over $150 billion, it'll be like, oh, I thought this bloke was good. No, he was just very lucky. So that's why I think Albo will go before the budget, because they've totally lost control of everything out there.
Well, James Ashby, when you've got a $100 billion hole in the budget because our exports to China are going to be down, you cut spending, don't you?
Well, that's normally the trend, and it's something that this Labor government don't know how to do very well at all, and that is pull the reins in. Households have got to do it right across the country. I think it's going to be a leaner Christmas for most households out there. But this is a government that think that by giving out or doling out all this money, more borrowed money, I might just say, they will win the votes. And they may very well do that. That is what Labor do best. They scare people into thinking that the coalition will pull or retract the money from the economy so greatly that it will have detrimental impacts on people's hip pockets. We know that people are struggling already, so that fear itself doesn't take much to permeate the minds of those people already doing it tough. Look, if they're going to use any levers as a government between now and the election, I don't think they're leaving themselves much time. But to soften the landing here, they've got to make doing business in this country a whole lot easier, and they're doing nothing about that. In fact, they're only making it tougher for businesses. And as a result of that, we are seeing businesses crumble at a rapid rate of knots, and that's not making life any better either.
Indeed. Well, before we move on from Jim Chalmers, he's announced his appointments to the RBA's new interest rate setting board. We've got RBA Governor Michelle Bullock. We've got an RBA Deputy Governor, the Treasury Secretary, an economist, a university professor, a former bank boss, and a couple of company directors. But here's what the Treasurer said today.
So these are high quality, high calibre people, and together they present They represent the best mix of relevant skills and abilities and experience. I'm very proud to say that women will make up the majority of both boards, and this continues the very substantial progress that we've made when it comes to appointments in the Treasury portfolio.
Michael Kroger, I'm sure they're all very qualified, but why does the Treasurer make it about gender? Does anybody really care?
Yeah, they do care. They want people appointed on the basis of their ability. Now, look, they probably have been appointed on the basis of ability and they look very well qualified, as you said. But why does Chalmers want to say, oh, we've got a majority of women, i.e. maybe they're not the best qualified, but they're women, that's why we've appointed them? I mean, no one wants to be known to be a diversity hire. Someone's got to give this guy the memo. We're past peak woke now. People are tired of this nonsense, right? If you're going in for neurosurgery, do you want to be told that the neurosurgeon is not the top person in the field, only got into the course as a diversity person and is not really, the top neurosurgeon, but is trying their best? Well, no one wants to be told I'm on the Reserve Bank board possibly because I'm a woman. It's insulting to those women who've got excellent, outstanding careers. It's just insulting. And as I said, someone should tell this bloke, we're over all this nonsense. We want people to the Reserve Bank board and these senior positions appointed on the basis of their ability.
And it's insulting to people who are struggling with their mortgages as well. I mean, as if we care about the sex of the people on the interest rate board. We just want interest rates to come down, sort out the economy. Going back to Victoria for a moment, James Ashby, as if Victorians haven't suffered enough, Premier Jacinta Allan is planning to force households off gas. But here's a surprise. It looks like an absolute vote killer. Who knew? A new poll by Redbridge has found people are less likely to vote for the Labor government because of the no gas policy. And that's Labor voters too. 30% of Labor supporters said they would be less likely to vote for the government due to its gas phase-out plans. That's a big hit for Jacinta Allan, James.
Oh, you bet. And I suspect that this polling has prompted other polling. Just before coming to where I took a poll from UComs on this exact same issue on energy transition. So there is more and more polling. I think as we get closer to another federal election, these sorts of polls are going to take precedence. The issue is Victoria is a different state to the ACT, who made this announcement they were going to transition all those houses over to electricity all those years ago. The ACT earns a lot more money. There's a lot more wealth in that territory. But Victoria, and the polls were done in some of those marginal seats, it says a completely different story here. People want choice. They're happy with their gas. They don't want the cost of having to refit their entire kitchen out. And if you're a migrant who loves to cook with gas, especially the Asian community, I don't think electricity, I know myself, an induction cooktop's never going to cut it versus that of a hot wok on gas, that's for sure.
I'll tell you the other thing that was interesting about this poll, Michael, is that only 30% of Greens voters said they would be prepared to cop the cost themselves to move from... Why are you laughing, Michael? You thought Greens were committed to it.
They're committed, aren't they?
I always thought so.
10 out of 10.
70% of them apparently said we're not paying out of our own pocket.
And 90% of the public said we're not paying for this. I mean,
that's correct.
There's another memo that needs to go to Jacinta Allan. Jacinta, there's a cost of living crisis. People are not so worried about whether it's gas, or not. What they can't afford is to put food on the table. They can't afford to put food in the wok. But listen, here's the bigger point about what Allan's doing. I think there's now an extreme likelihood that Jacinta Allan will be dumped as Labor leader before the next state election. I can't see Labor
big call.
Sticking with her. Big call. I haven't got one wrong yet. For a long, long time, I would think Jacinta, in fact, I can't think of the last one I got wrong. Jacinta Allan won't lead the Labor Party to the 26th election. She's too tainted by Daniel Andrews. She's too yesterday's person. The baggage of that hopeless Tim Pallas and the whole Andrews era is wrapped around her. She doesn't look like the future. She looks like a relic from the train wreck from the past. She can't survive as leader. She's going to lose, and they're going to dump her and put in the deputy Ben Carroll. That would be my guess. He doesn't have the numbers because he's in the minority, but sooner or later, our good friend Stephen Conroy and the other people that can manipulate these things, they'll dump her. They'll put in Carroll. Carroll's got all those sort of Chris Minns He looks to me like a Chris Minns, moderate, sensible, younger, newer, fresher. And if you notice, Minns had an argument. He said something critical of Daniel Andrews the other week, just to distance himself from Andrews. Yep. So it's like, I'm not him. I'm more a Chris Minns. I'm more a Malinowskis. That's what they're going to do. I don't think she can survive. It's
funny. I don't know if I'm imagining this, but whenever I see Jacinta Allen at a press conference, her demeanour, her manner is very much like Dan Andrews. Yeah. Sorry, what was that, James?
Yeah.
I was just saying it might be a good time for the Liberals to dump their state leader as well. Yeah, I was being a little smart, but also quite serious at the same time.
Right, very good, very good. I just don't think she can survive, mate. I just don't.
We'll see. I agree with you, James, though. I think the Liberals aren't much chop either. They could do with a change there as well. Let's move on to other topics. The major news, of course, over the weekend was that the remaining 5 members of the Bali Nine have arrived on home soil. After more than 19 years in prison for drug smuggling, they're now free men. Here's the Prime Minister, Anthony Albanese.
The 5 men committed serious offences. Australia shares Indonesia's concern about the serious problem illicit drugs represents. These Australians served more than 19 years in prison in Indonesia. It was time for them to come home.
James Ashby, good call or bad call?
I'm a bit mixed on this, I must admit. Part of me hates the idea. I was only a young bloke. They were only a few years younger than me when they were found to be strapped with, several kilos of heroin trying to get out of Indonesia all those years ago. They have had their lives squandered by their own decisions. I'm not for a second saying that's anyone's fault by their own. But these were young blokes, and 19 years in an Indonesian prison would feel like a lifetime of hell. Sometimes I wish that our prison system would treat criminals the same way as they do, because it might be more of a deterrent. But one thing I found very interesting about this decision, it was reported today that they've had their sentences quashed. Now, that's very interesting terminology, because, as we know, if you're a convicted criminal, when you return to Australia or you get out of prison here, you aren't to profit off your crimes. That mere statement of having their prison terms quashed may allude to the fact that these blokes might be able to sell their stories at a later date. That's something I'd just keep an eye out for. But, yeah, look, I've got mixed emotions. I know there's plenty of people out there. I hate the scourge of drugs in this country. And it's people like these young blokes and the one woman that was involved in it that have killed many, many people in this country who've either dabbled or become hooked on drugs as a result of their actions. So mixed reaction, but look, let's hope they make something of what is left of their lives.
Yeah, I share your sentiments. I feel pretty mixed about this as well, Michael. I mean, they've served 19 years, which is probably what they would have got had they been sentenced in Australia. These guys were, early 20s when they committed these crimes? Do you leave them there for the rest of their lives, or do you give them the opportunity for redemption, but you've still got to be tough on drugs?
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
What do you think?
Well, look, I think James is right. There's no winner out of this. Young kids do stupid things. But for the grace of God, there's a lot of people who've done stupid things in their lives. These kids got caught, and as James says, how many people have been killed down the road by taking the drugs that these people might have done before? Who knows? Who knows what the history is? But as a parent, and I've got 4 boys, and a parent, you think to yourself, one of my kids has been in Corrockabin, what's it called, Jakirabokken jail for 19 years. And he's coming home at Christmas, boy. So as a parent, you think to yourself, 19 years is a long time. As you say, that's probably 40 years in an Australian jail.
Yeah. Well, let's hope they make the most of the opportunity, because, to be honest, they were fortunate not to be shot. They've been given a second chance, and so good luck to them. Let's hope they can turn things around. One more thing before we get to the break. Common sense seems to have prevailed for at least some in this country. The Melbourne Storm NRL team have decided to ditch regular welcome to country ceremonies, saying, quote, "We're really keen to let our actions rather than words reflect what we stand for as a club in the community." So they'll still do welcome to country occasionally, but it won't be like the excessive amount that we're used to in so much sport these days. Michael Kroger, what do you think?
Well, mate, we're past peak woke, as I said. And,
Gee, I hope so. I hope you're right.
You can just feel it everywhere. You can feel it everywhere across the board, starting with the university vice chancellors in America who got sacked over anti-Semitism, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It's throughout the world. People are sick of the welcome to countries. I mean, they don't want to be disrespectful to Indigenous Australians at all. But at every sporting event, when meetings start, public service have meetings, and this is ridiculous. People are over it.
Can I ask you something about being a Victorian? The AFL is so woke. Is it significant that the Melbourne Storm have made this decision here in AFL Heartland?
It is a little bit here in Victoria. They're basically sending a message to the AFL. I would think an overwhelming majority of football supporters don't want this, but they're very polite at the ground. They don't want to show disrespect. But they're certainly over Qantas welcoming us to Australia every time we land in a Qantas plane. That's got to go in due course because that doesn't do Qantas any good.
Yeah.
People don't want to be patronised in that way.
James, what do you reckon? Do you agree with Michael that we are beyond peak woke and there's a turn coming?
Well, I heard this was coming about 4 weeks ago, and I thought, I'll believe it when I see it. Look, if the one thing that I can say to the NRL itself is until it happens across the entire NRL, it means nothing from the Storm. But if they can do it in Victoria, that should be a clear indication to the whole NRL teams across the entire country. If they can do it, you can do it as a code altogether. So, and Michael is right. I want to see it going from not just NRL but aircraft. We're all over it. The wokeism has got to stop, and maybe it can be a New Year's resolution for so many corporate industry as well as sporting clubs from January 1, 2025. Wouldn't that be amazing?
It'd be a great Christmas present. I hope that we all get it. Michael Kroger, James Ashby, appreciate your time tonight.
Thanks, mate.